Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. We talk everything animation here, including Rick and Morty, which we'll be getting into today. I'm Dylan Hysen, your host for today's Rick and Morty panel discussion on the latest episode of Rick and Morty Rest and Ricklaxation. We had our recap podcast earlier in the week discussing this episode. You can check that out at overlyanimated.com or search for Overly Animated Rick and Morty on iTunes to find our Rick and Morty specific feed or our Overly Animated general feed. We have a recap and panel discussion here every week. So you can subscribe to us for all your Rick and Morty content, including next week, well, there will be no episode. We'll still have our panel discussion. So look out for that, although no recap podcast, cause no episode. But this is our panel where, we get new opinions on the episode from our panelists, and they'll be graded on their answers, on criteria of correctness, originality, and, reasoning. Yeah, there you go. And also how much you piss me off. So, those are the criteria. So let's meet our panelists for today. Introduce yourself don't introduce. Just talk about the, what you thought of, Rest and Ricklaxation. First is our defending champion, Alex Bonilla.
Hola. I'll just say Ricklaxation, very good episode. I'll begin with a hot take. All original music on the show sucks. Terry Folds, get out of here.
Oh, that's a strike already. Oh, I don't know. I don't like that.
Might as well get the negative points out of the way early.
Considering I've listened to Terry Fold about 100 times since Sunday, I don't know. I think that's instant negative points for Alex.
Well, boo-hoo.
What do you mean sucks? Like, obviously it's bad, but that's not the point. Like, it's funny, right? Do you disagree?
Yes, it wasn't funny.
Okay.
What? That is just wrong.
I mean, it's subjective. So, we'll also, maybe that's all.
We'll talk about it a little more, but it's used in the episode, it's fine, but hearing it in full, just, nah, bleh.
Okay. I'll start you off with a -2, although you'll have a chance to justify yourself and, take away those points later. Okay. Next is, April Collins.
Hey, I also really enjoyed this episode, and hot take, I enjoyed the music in this episode. And
that's not a hot take! Everyone else here liked it.
No, it's my hot take, because I enjoyed the music, and it helped play a role into the episode grading that I gave it, so booyah.
Okay. I correct opinion. I do agree this is not a hot take. Hot take has to be divergent from the consensus opinion, yeah.
Well, whatever, I don't care.
It's hot take relative to the opinion that has so far been expressed on the podcast by Alex.
Exactly.
Anyway, last is Andy Potter.
Hello, and I am the example of Dylan's last criteria for grading, because I pissed him off last week.
Look, hopefully you've learned your lesson, and
I hope I have, Dylan, but I've never claimed to be a quick learner, so we'll have to wait and see. But I like this episode. I think it's hard to say this episode is bad. It was like a lot like a classic Rick and Morty episode. There was a lot fewer laughs though, but the actual structure was very similar and I liked it. And I'll get into why I liked it later, but I thought it was good. I thought it was really good.
Okay. So, we've heard their intro takes, but now let's dive into, more detail on what they thought of the episode. I want all of our panelists to grade the episode on an A to F scale, according to whatever their arbitrary system is. So Alex, you can start us off. What is your grade for this episode and why?
I give this episode a solid A. I think it sneaks into my top 5, honestly. There was almost no flaws in the entire episode. I think from the very beginning, like the intro is one of the best I've seen in the show so far. Just stick the little random Star Wars parody in the middle, and then just them exchanging screams and cries and sobs, and just Rick admitting he lost control. And then from there on, like the rest of the show, like it's a very interesting twist on a common trope in animation, just like changing up how you split the two halves of a personality. I think that when they initially show Toxic Rick and Toxic Morty, they do a good job of not making it too obvious until Rick spells it out for you. And also just the side characters I love in this episode. Jessica, Stacy, Jacqueline, they're all really good to me. Just, I could, if I have problems with this episode, they're nitpicks. So really, I think it deserves the A.
Okay, I like the bold grade out of the gate here from Alex. April, what's your grade for this episode?
I gave this episode an A-. Overall, it was a great Rick and Morty episode. It had a lot of the classic elements, kind of jumping around all over the place. I really enjoyed the music, especially...
said pointedly, yeah.
I like that there was sort of like a theme between like the toxic Rick and Morty and then like the quote unquote healthy Rick and Morty. They each had their own sort of theme music, which I really got into. I like music. I liked the jokes in this episode. They played really well into the story. I also like that we still got that. I'm all about the darkness of this season. And so I like that we got that hint of that darkness that they keep, they've been telling us about all season. This is the darkest season ever, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, a solid A- from me. So, and my one nitpick I'll get into later, so.
Okay. A- from April. Andy, what's your grade here?
My grade is a B+, but I want to say that I don't think my grade is necessarily a lot worse than theirs. It's just that my scale is a little lower than theirs, because this is actually tied with Pickle Rick in my head, and it's really hard to tell for me which one's better. They're just really different episodes, but they're both up there. And for me, an A is just like the funniest, the best possible thing ever that Rick and Morty can do, because it's a scale of only Rick and Morty episodes. So I think this is a fair B+. And this is a really good episode, though, and I really liked it. We got into some things that I really enjoyed. I really liked talking about their ideas of what toxic and healthy are. I really liked some of the gags in this episode were really funny. There were a couple that recurred multiple times through the episode, and they were really good. And I think, but there were a couple things I didn't like. I thought there were a couple of elements they could have done without, but overall the concept was really great. And there's just a couple of nitpicks over some things that I disliked.
Oh, my grading scale is so tough. I'm Andy. That was your answer there.
I was going to say, goodness.
Yeah, that was
holding Rick and Morty to such a high standard.
That was my mocking of your no. So that was okay. Good. B+ at the lowest. That was. Am I going to be too mean to Andy this podcast? That's what we're going to track here. So, but
I think you are.
I think I might. But that was good grades on this episode. Alex gets a 5 for the boldness of giving it a day. I like hot takes here. So, hot takes all around for Alex so far. I feel like he's determined that I like these hot takes. This is a good route to go. April gets 4 points. Also a good answer. Although you said I like music as its own phrase. So -1 point for that.
I don't care.
And then, Andy gets...
I'll get that point back.
Okay, I like that attitude. Andy gets 4 points because of his tooting his own horn on his grading scale here. Only I can do that, Andy. Okay, so let's
You can't... Never mind. I'm done.
Yeah, Andy's like done. Mimicking my behavior there and losing points for it. I'm not hypocritical. What are you talking about? So let's get into our next question. Who is the MVP of the episode? Which character would you describe as the MVP? And you have to distinguish between toxic and healthy Rick and Morty here. So you can't just give me Morty for the 4th week in a row, Alex. You'd at least have to give me toxic. You'd at least have to give me toxic or healthy Morty. Okay. Andy, who's your MVP?
My MVP of the episode is, I'm pretty sure that it's Toxic Rick, because he is just the kind of like, we've been arguing this entire season, the entire show, about what Rick's personality is, like if he actually cares about people, if he actually has these feelings for his family. And this episode, and we've had a lot of really definitive things, but this episode's like, yes, he does, and he thinks they're bad. He thinks those ideas are bad. And everything that Toxic Rick stands for is everything that we've been trying to figure out about Rick this entire show. And he does it, and not to mention, he's just a really funny character through all of this. Just the idea that he's goop, and the idea that he wants to kill quote unquote healthy Rick is just really great. But also there's some things about Toxic Rick that are actually redeemable, and this reflects in Toxic Morty as well. And I just really find it interesting. I find these kinds of dark mirrors really interesting when they're done well. Sometimes they're not done well. Like there's some Star Trek episodes that have really strayed into like bad mirroring, but this episode really does it well. And when it does like this, I just love it. I love these mirrors. I love getting foils for characters and seeing how they interact together. And this was a perfect example of how to do it in a comedy like this.
Okay, Toxic Rick. Strong start here. April, who's your MVP?
My MVP was Jessica because hold on. I appreciated that she was totally honest, and it's kind of weird for such a side character to kind of have character development, especially in a show like this, where she, like, you're always just sort of, like, she's pinned as that, like, popular girl and everything like that. But then she, like, takes note of Morty. She goes out on a date with him, and instead of, like, lying to him, she was totally honest. She's like, this isn't working out. Like, this isn't going to go anywhere. I don't like who you are now. And just ends the date there. And I totally appreciate that honesty, especially in a show such as Rick and Morty. And then even at the end, like, I enjoy that she got into a fight with Rick because Rick tried to put it on her that she was trying to get Morty to come back, or that she wanted a new Morty. But I'm pretty sure she's not aware of, like, that there are multiple Mortys in the universe. And so she just fights with him about it. And yeah, I like her in this episode. So that's my MVP. Hot take.
Ooh. This is a good strategy, picking Jessica in the who's the MVP. I love that. I love the diving into, like, was Jessica or Rick being honest at the end by, like, solving it by saying Jessica doesn't know about multiple Mortys. So, that was above and beyond. I enjoyed that a lot. Okay, Alex, who's your MVP here?
Anybody want to take a guess?
Are you saying Morty?
Look, well,
wait, which one though?
No, he's gonna say just Morty. I promise you.
No. I think the MVP here is Healthy Morty. I think even though he gets the most screen time of any of the four halves here, I think he's the one who doesn't lay out, like, what his issues are, like, in words. Whereas, like, Toxic Rick, Toxic Morty, and even Healthy Rick, they kind of just, like, let their stuff out, like, they let their character motivations out, like, clearly, like, oh, I hate myself. Oh, I think that these people should have the right to choose for themselves, like, things like that. Whereas Healthy Morty, I think his is more shown in how he acts, or how he reacts to people around him. What kind, like, he doesn't actually state these things outright, and it gives us a little bit more room to interpret his character. And also, just, like, in terms of entertainment, I think his manic delivery of his lines, whether in the restaurant or in the Wall Street parody scene, the fact that he just, like, manages to seduce two mature women who don't know him, it's like all, like, little and also there's, like, quirks, like him eating, like, ooh, organic, like, just, like, I think just the combination of all of that together, like, makes him the most interesting of the four halves here. And I think it's good that despite him getting the most screen time, he ends up being the one that I think got the most depth of any of these halves. Okay.
These are all strong answers here. Andy gets 4 points for Toxic Rick. A little bit conventional of a choice, but I like the justification there. April, a full 5 points for choosing Jessica. What a good strategy. I love Jessica. This is a great pick. And a bonus point for figuring out who was right, Jessica or Rick at the end. So 6 points for April. And Alex, how do you choose Morty for the fourth week in a row?
He warned you.
Look, so the only reason you're not getting a 0 here is because this is the correct answer. That's the, like, this is, you're right that Healthy Morty is definitely the MVP, but I'll give only 3 points. You can't, and
I'm satisfied with that.
Yeah.
You don't have to justify
That's
yourself.
probably more than you thought was happening.
Except his 3 points.
It was a great explanation and it's the correct pick, but oh my god, again? Okay.
Look, Morty is the star of season 3. How many times do I have to tell you?
4 in a row, apparently.
Pick Morty.
Yes,
we could pick Morty because we knew you would.
Oh my god. Okay, yeah. So
for the record, Toxic Rick was my first choice.
Toxic. Wait. So
hold on.
I had the option of either copying Andy's answer or copying my own answers from past weeks.
Okay, this is why you prepare 3 answers for the panel. That's the conclusion here. I was about to get mad at the waffling, but preparing multiple answers, that's a good tactic here. Okay, let's go into quicker answers here in the lightning round. What is the funniest line of the episode, April?
Aren't you a child? Only in the ways that matter. Like, That's the best, like, it's the worst pickup line, but it worked, so... Dang it, Stacey, why do you have to do that?
Yeah, I'm not sure which part is funnier of that sequence, honestly. Like,
exactly, like, those two lines together just make the whole scene, because he's, like, hardcore, like, trying to pick her up, and then she just straight up is like, aren't you a child? And he just says, only in the ways that matter, and she still goes for it. I mean... I guess props to her, but I'm kind of disgusted at the same time.
Wow, I like
it's a little weird once your mind starts wandering to pedophilia.
Well, yeah. Obviously, like, this whole episode, duh. That's
crazy.
Not a hot take there, I would say. Yeah, I think the way Stacey sells the beginning of aren't you a child? Like, just, oh my God, I love that line read. Okay. By the way, Stacey would have been like 8 points if you chose her for MVP. No one did that. Come on. Stacey's the MVP here. Come on.
She really is, poor girl.
I think Stacey, Jessica, and Healthy Morty are all correct answers. Okay. That's April's funniest line of the episode. Andy, what's your line?
My favorite line, and I don't think it should be a surprise to any of you because you saw me post this on the Patreon group. My favorite line was, she can't keep the drones. They turn into a little Voltron robot. They're awesome. You can't keep the drones. And I just love that. Like, it's not just that, like, kids want to give up technology. Like, he uses Voltron as a reason why he can't give them up. And I just love this. Like, he's attached to the fact that he made a Voltron robot. And I just love it. I love it so much. It's such a stupid explanation for why. He could have just said, no, they're my drones. But he had to add this part to it as well. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, definitely loving the Voltron robots here. Alex, your funniest line.
Is it wrong if I think this is kind of hot?
Okay.
I guess this entire episode had a lot of kinky stuff, but like that, just her entire vibe of like thinking everything was related to sets, and like in the end, I was like, is this some kind of sets dungeon and all? But I think that was the peak of that like theme going on in that sequence. Just like, while the Rick and Morty are fighting with each other, it's just like that. Okay, that's what you get off on. All right.
Yeah, I love that line too. Clearly, we're agreeing Stacey's the MVP if we're giving 2 out of the 3 best lines of the episode to Stacey here. I mean, come on.
Best jokes per minute.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's true. We need to, that's our new Rick and Morty statistic. Well,
best jokes
that's how we'll
per
grade
minute.
characters. I think that was a little creepy, Alex saying that line though. You were like into it. Okay, like into the line read there. I don't know if I like that.
Gotta get into character, man.
Yeah, I don't know if that was a good one to get into character for. Okay,
it's a good character.
Yeah. Okay.
He did his best. Okay.
Yeah. 5 points all around. These are good choices as opposed to last week when you guys did not choose good lines. These are 3 of the funniest lines. I agree. The only thing is that the Voltron one might be more of a gag than a line.
I think I focused in on the line though specifically.
Yeah. You approached it right, but you might have taken someone's gag. But, yeah, there you go. 5 points all around. Good job, guys. Let's move on to funniest gag of the episode. More of a long form concept that you found funny. Alex, what's yours?
I mean, it's stupid, but just when Morty's describing the spa treatment to Jessica and he's making all these weird noises, it's like whoosh, blah, blah, wee, wee, wee. So just like it's just like a random bobble of noises, and Jessica's just like freaked out. But like it goes with the whole manicness of that entire scene, and I think like that was the nice icing on the cake of that interaction before Jessica's like, nah.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't consider that one. Did you guys like that part? April, Andy?
It was okay. I didn't really focus in on it really heavily, but I mean, it was good. It was well animated, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah.
But
it's probably one of the more lowbrow gags of the episode, but like
there you go.
Yeah,
not the sex dungeon stuff. Okay, but
yeah, I mean, there's
that's very nuanced.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's if you say so. Yeah, definitely some great Justin Roiland voice acting here with Healthy Morty for sure. In that scene especially. Okay, that's an interesting choice. April, what is your funniest gag of the episode?
So, I know we're putting her as the MVP character, but I put her as my favorite gag, and that's Stacey. Especially how she even got the post-credit scene where she, like, finally gets out of the thing and she yells sea cucumber, but just, like, her the entire time, because she's just like, is this a sex dungeon? Like, and I think she even, like, says sea cucumber, like, right away, but just, I thought she was just a great gag the entire episode. So, or I guess what is it? The character is pedophilia. That's kind of wrong, but
that's the funniest gag. Okay, interesting. Yeah. Okay. I mean, clearly, I think Stacy's great. I think if you could say like Stacy's like sexual deviance is a gag. I don't know the character itself, but she is kind of a gag character, I guess. So,
yeah, she kind of is. Like, she starts off the whole like sexual deviance of healthy Morty, I guess. So
yeah.
And it just goes from there. Like, and no one questions it either. That's the biggest problem. We're not going to get into it because that's a dark path, but.
Yeah. Okay. Stacy as the favorite gag. Andy, what's yours?
I think my favorite gag. My favorite gag of the episode was Trisha Lang at the beginning and end, when she was first talking about docking and then talking about getting peed on and saying yum. Like I don't know, like she's just talking about this in the middle of the hallway, these weird things that like you just don't talk about. While they're
at school?
Yeah, while you're at school. You don't talk about this at school. You don't talk about this like around just casual friends like this at school. And she's just like, oh, I just want that docking kind of love, like the penis inside the foreskin kind of love. And it's just so absurd. And everyone's just like, yeah, this is normal. This is a normal conversation at school today. This is fine. And I don't know. I found it really funny both the times it came up in the episode.
Okay. Andy, I think that you just weren't having good enough time in high school. I think that was the problem.
I was a band kid.
Yeah, I think that might have been. I feel like the opposite is.
Wait, I feel like those are the kinkiest.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Well, no. See, I was
wait a second. Did we not all talk about that in high school?
Well, the thing is, I was a lame band kid, so everyone else around me was doing it, and I wasn't. Okay. That was the problem.
Oh, but I was in band too, so you lost your excuse?
Oh. Ooh, smack talk. Oh, I like it. Okay. Okay, decent choices all around here, yeah. I don't know if I'm super sold on any of the answers, but they're all justified well. So 4 points all around on funniest gag.
Yay!
Yeah, yay. Let's get into our longer form question. And that is, what are your major takeaways about the characterizations of Rick and Morty based off of this episode, like based off of the things we learn about them from Healthy Rick and Healthy Morty and Toxic Rick, Toxic Morty? What are your big takeaways here? So I think there's a lot here in the episode, can kind of go in any direction. April, you're up first here.
So I just thought the biggest takeaways was what they sort of define, like how the character, because they don't say it until later in the episode, but their toxic characters are what they themselves define as what is toxic to themselves. And so I thought that was really interesting, especially like when I was rewatching it, that how like Rick's definition of being toxic is like caring for Morty and everything. Like, you know, like it's caring for Morty is my biggest takeaway from that, you know, and he didn't necessarily like want to destroy the world or anything like that. He just wanted to turn it into a more toxic environment. Whereas like Healthy Rick was like, oh, well, who am I to decide like what happens to each dimension and whether it's saved or destroyed? But then I also thought it was really interesting that whenever they're fighting inside the house, Healthy Rick worried about the safety of Beth and Summer, but the toxic version of him cares about Morty. So I thought that was really interesting that there was that difference between like caring, like it's okay for him to care about like Beth and Summer, but it's not okay for him to care about Morty. So I just took that, like, I don't know. It was interesting to me. And then for Morty, basically his like toxicity is like being cowardly and worrying and things like that, versus Healthy Morty where he just didn't care. Like he was like, let Toxic Rick and Toxic Morty like be trapped or whatever. Like he didn't care, and like he was very honest, I guess. So I guess like those other characteristics in himself sort of came out, versus being like worrying, having to care about like what's going on with Rick and what Rick is up to and everything like that. So it was really interesting to sort of see that play out. And then to later learn that that's how they define what's toxic in their lives.
Okay, good start here. Andy, what do you think on this topic?
There's a lot to say here, and I want to start with, I think April really touched on this first level, that like this is what's going on. They have different opinions of what's toxic about themselves than what I think the viewers might think are toxic. But I think there's a second level here, and that level is that they don't understand how to become healthy. And that's what really became clear here, because because I think this is a theme that keeps going through the whole season here, that Rick is looking for a way to be healthy, but he's also looking for a quick fix in a lot of ways. He's looking for a way to just suddenly wake up and these parts that he thinks are bad are gone. But when we had Pickle Rick, we had this argument that it's work. And whether you're doing it through therapy or not, it's going to be work trying to figure out how to be a healthier person, because you can't just pick and choose how to throw away things that are bad about yourself or you think are bad about yourself. And that's what they think is becoming healthy, just throwing out these things that are bad about themselves. Because I don't think they really show remorse at the end. They're just like, oh, that didn't work. I guess we're just fine. Like, I think that they're just trying to be like, hey, this didn't work, so there's no way to fix it, and we're just going to keep going forward. And I think we are gonna tackle more ways of how they're unhealthy and healthy in the future, especially Rick. But in the short term here, Rick was just like, yep, I'm myself again. And he like farted and said like, excuse me. Like, he was happy with back to being himself, and he kind of missed the whole point of this, which was trying to become healthy. And I think it's a lot of short-sightedness, and I think it's a lot of they just need to put in the work and they don't want to. And that became expressly clear here, that both of them need to put in some amount of work to get something out of it. There's not just some magical machine that's just going to make them better people.
Interesting. Relating it back to the therapy talk in Pickle Rick. Alex, chime in here. What's your take?
Well, something that April said stood out to me, because she talked about how this episode is kind of saying that Rick's idea of being toxic is like caring for Morty. And I think it's interesting when you look at healthy Rick. He does actually mention that he's proud of being Morty's grandfather, and also he does show some concern for Morty, because at the end, his motivation for getting the two sides to merge is for Morty to actually be healthy, not this kind of fakeness. So I think it's a bit more nuanced than the fact that Rick just thinks that caring for Morty is wrong. But I do think that he's worried that if it might get to a point where something might be very compromised if he shows too much affection for Morty in the present without thinking in the future or thinking of the big picture, as Healthy Rick mentions. Also, what stood out to me with Morty was this entire season has been kind of the arc of Morty gaining more confidence, being willing to speak out more against Rick. And it's interesting that Healthy Morty, at least to me, like his interactions with Rick are very similar to how they are in previous episodes, of him being willing to smack Rick into logic, telling him, no, what you're thinking is wrong. Like that's how he's been acting, especially in Vindicators 3, for example. So it's interesting that in that sense, it seems like Morty is already pretty healthy to begin with. A lot of his cowardice, or what he perceives to be toxic, hasn't really shown up a lot since the early seasons. So I found that thing interesting, that while Rick seems to be declining or failing in his attempts, Morty seems to be on a positive route. But you also have to wonder if being with Rick for too long will end up reverting that at some point, or making it go past a line where he becomes like pure Healthy Morty, which is having that overconfidence flow into the rest of your relationships, such as Jessica or maybe your family, and then you just end up shutting everybody out.
Can I say that I just really disagree with this idea that Morty's healthy? Because I guess I might have like a personal experience with this, and I'm really sure that Morty has anger problems, and that's not really a joke. That's like a real thing that you have when you're young, when you're not sure how to, in developmental phases. We've seen Morty hurt people in ways that are insanely brutal. And we can't just blame them on like the situation, on like, because one episode he was in the purge thing and he just went crazy killing people. And he was just so mad. And I have experience with this. When I was a kid, I had anger problems. I had anger management problems. I had to go to therapy and fix it. And I'm not saying therapy is the only way to do it. I'm just saying I had to put in work to fix it. And I don't think Morty's addressing that as a problem with himself, that anger is a problem that he needs to focus on, because it can mess up your life if you don't just figure out that you're more angry than you need to be. And I think it's kind of blasé to say that he's not angry, more angry than he should be, because I really do think he is way more angry than he should be right now.
Right, but it's interesting that healthy Morty really only expresses his anger towards Rick. He doesn't really express it towards other people. Like, for example, his relationships with Jessica and the woman were very respectful, right? So I think that definitely, as you're mentioning, like, this is his idea of being healthy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there are flaws. And that if he continues on this route that we've been seeing going in the season, but without him realizing that there's a line that could very easily be crossed, then that's where you're right, it does become unhealthy. But I think right now, just his relationship with Rick, like just in the self-contained, I think that it is good that Morty's finally willing to speak out when things are going wrong, and in that sense, be the conscience for Rick.
I guess I just disagree with that argument because I still see him getting angry at Rick, and I'm worried that that's going to push him further towards that line that could be irrevocable, where he does something really bad. I mean, this season started with him pretty much killing. He thought that he shot Rick to death, but he just didn't read the note. Like, that's how this season opened. Like, there's some stuff there with Morty that we're just not getting into yet, and I'm really sure that it's going to result. It's going to end in some way this season. I think that's what we're leading to, with either Morty or Rick having some crazy revelation or doing something really either on the edge of their character or maybe even like weirder than we're used to. But something's going to happen here. Something has to break or change at some point this season, or they're just going to go really, really bad.
So that was a good.
Also,
yeah, go ahead, April.
I was gonna say, I also think that it's it's kind of interesting that, because I was just thinking while I was listening to you guys talking, and I thought it was very interesting that we kind of talked about how Morty's sort of, like, healthy Morty was sort of working towards a path towards isolating himself. And when you think about it, that's kind of what, like, regular Rick had done to himself, is he sort of isolated himself away from his family and friends and things like that. And so I was just thinking, like, that it's an interesting parallel to make, especially with quote unquote healthy Morty, is that he just ends up like, he goes out on a date with Jessica and completely ruins it, and then doesn't even really care in the end. And even then, like, I think her name, the girlfriend that he had,
Jacqueline.
or even
Jacqueline,
yeah. So, like, even, like, with Stacy and Jacqueline, like, he had no problem just sort of leaving them behind and just picking up from there. And I mean, not like it was a huge, like, he was picking up and starting over, but in a sense, he just had no issues leaving them behind. And that's often what they would describe regular Rick as, is that, oh, he just kind of comes and goes as he pleases. He doesn't care what he leaves behind. And those words have actually come out of Morty's mouth. So it's an interesting parallel to sort of see played out. And even if it's just a small one, but it could kind of, like, I can see it leading into something bigger just from that, because that's Morty's idea of what being healthy is. So, like, Morty's idea of being healthy is, being confident and standing up for himself, but also being okay with just being alone. Like, that doesn't seem right. That just seems like it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I think April's touching on this a little bit. Alex, I need you to defend this point that this is Morty on a healthy trajectory from this episode, because my level 1 analysis of Morty's character from this episode is that healthy Morty is like such a douchebag, and healthy Rick is like a much better person than normal Rick. It seems like Rick's image of what healthiness is way more correct than what Morty's image of healthiness is. The detoxifier goes on their perceptions of what's toxic and not, and it seems like Rick, and I would say the level of analysis on Morty is that Rick has ruined his image of what is healthy for himself. All he's concerned about is blatant, like, social confidence, and he places no weight on anything moral. Healthy Morty has no conscience, he says, or says Jacqueline. This is like Morty's healthy image of himself as a tool bag. This seems like it's a very bad path from what I've seen.
Yeah, see, it's interesting because he mentions having lack of a conscience, right? But at the same time, when Rick is all like, well, let's let the world decide what they want to decide. But Morty is the one who has to be like, no, you have to think about the rest of the people. We're not going to be happy, toxic and all. So, like, while he mentions having lack of a conscience, I do feel that he has some sort of empathy. And that's, as I mentioned, that is demonstrated somewhat in his relationships as well. And I think this healthy Morty is not the target he wants. Like I think there are healthy traits that he's working towards. But you're right. If he turned into this full stop, then yes, he would be a terrible person, because that is basically him having Rick as his role model. And Rick, as we noted, has positive traits, like the fact that he is able to get himself out of different situations, the fact that he's able to befriend people from various races and dimensions and all. Like at the start, like those are good things. But then he also has his toxic side, right? The fact that he wants to prove he's more intelligent than everyone, then ends up working to his detriment. And I think the same thing works with Morty here. Right now, he's building positive traits. The fact that he is gaining confidence in his ability to interact with other people. But it could, as we mentioned, very easily go into full, quote unquote, healthy Morty, which will end up putting him in an isolationist situation and making him just mirror Rick's path into basically exile and just floating around. And while he may think he's happy, that his broken relationships are going to end up hurting him in the long run. So, like,
what's your logic behind Morty? This like not being what Morty views as healthy, like this not being Morty's idealized healthy form.
To him, this is ideal. And obviously he's, as we mentioned, like Rick has a better idea of what is toxic and what is not because he's an adult, because he has experience. Whereas Morty, his experience is with Rick. So obviously he has to or at least not obviously, but due to his experience, he's basing his definition of toxicity on what he sees in Rick, what he views as his negative and his positive values, right? So, like in that sense, his idealized view is not totally correct. However, there are traits that I think that he would be better off for developing, as long as he doesn't make it so that it ends up going too far out of control, or he ends up ruining relationships in the process.
So I think you're close to this answer. What do you think of something that popped into my head here, that what healthy Rick and Morty are is not their idealized versions of themselves.
Yes.
It's what their concept of the toxic parts of themselves are minus their current selves. Like the detoxifier doesn't say, here's the perfect version of you. It removes what you think is the worst part of you. So this isn't necessarily what Morty thinks is his ideal form. It's just Morty minus his like incredible insecurities.
Exactly. And I think that's what they mentioned when the machine is working. Like it just removed the toxins. It didn't necessarily change them in any way. It just took things away from them.
And this is I was actually going to get into this. I was really going to jump on this. I think it's really important to make this distinction, because this isn't idealized, but it's also important because when you take something out, it doesn't have the same effect as just changing yourself in some way. Because if you just take something away, there's a lot of unforeseeable consequences with that. And that's what my whole point about it being work is. And that's why it has to be work. If you just take parts of your personality away, you're not the same person at the end. The goal of becoming healthy is being the same person, but in a healthy equilibrium with your own personality and the people around you. If you're taking things out of you, you're just trying to cut corners and it doesn't work. And that's it. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Dylan. I really like that. I think that's the crux of this whole episode, actually.
Yeah, you tied that well back into your gotta work for healthiness argument. I wasn't buying that at first, but obviously I buy this as the life concept, but in terms of like a takeaway of this episode, but you tied that in well to what I was saying there. Yeah, so I think maybe Alex's argument would be that this is like Morty's worst potential form, but this isn't necessarily what he views. I think it is interesting to track, is Morty on a good or bad path here? I think at the very least, to a certain extent, this episode would show that Morty is being poisoned by Rick a lot. Like, I think this shows the effects of Rick's just kind of influence on Morty's worldview. Yeah, I think that...
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. You're taking the good with the bad.
Yeah. And there's also evidence of healthy Morty doing some good things too. Like, he is kind of respectful to these women to a certain extent. There's like, although, overall he's a creep, but like, he's, he does some good things. Yeah, like trying to stop Rick. There's some good points in there. It's a pretty nuanced take. So nuanced that it makes me wonder, like, are there firm conclusions behind it, or is it just like like gray is like, would we get to that point, and are there even takeaways? Anyway, so that's a good discussion here. I have grades written down. I don't remember why we did them. So April got 3 points, Alex got 4 points, Andy got 4 points, and then a bonus point for something chiming in along the way. So there you go. Cool. Why? Who knows? Legit. Who knows? But that's what I wrote down. Also, I think it's better to go last on that question because you all just kind of built on the last person's answers. Yeah. So as opposed to the other questions going first. Okay. Close heading into our final round. Let's make this a lightning final round here. Is that that was a good discussion, but took a while. What is the weakest part of the episode, April?
For me, I hated the overuse of the word pussy. It drove me crazy.
Wait, so what are some examples? None come to mind at the top of my head.
Well, just the song at the end.
Well, yeah, there was the song at the end, which wouldn't have been so bad, but Toxic Rick used that word to describe Healthy Rick, like, almost every time he spoke to him, like, or was talking about him. He's like, yeah, like, he would just, like, call him a pussy. He'd, like, it just really bothered me, just, like, the overuse of it. Like, there was too much. Like, if it was, like, 1 or 2 times, but I think, like, I counted, and it was a lot. Like, I think it hit 10 at least. So, like, it was just too much. Like, every time he was just like, yeah, you would think that, you pussy. And it was like, why? Like, what was the point of saying that word again? And I don't know if it's just because, like, I'm a girl and I just have a problem with that, but I didn't like it. And it got, like, really annoying and sort of, like, wore down on me. And that's the reason why, like, if you had taken out, like, over half of the use of that word, then it would have been, like, a really great episode for me. But I just wasn't into it.
Yeah. No, definitely not. It's definitely generally applicable, and definitely just generally sexist a word to use. Female connotations, and it's a negative word. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too is, like, it's a word that they've never used before, ever, like, in the entirety of the show. I've never heard that word come out of any character. And so I was just like, it was very, like, abrasive to me. So.
Is there an argument that since it's Toxic Rick saying it, that they're, like, not condoning it and it's just, like, an asshole who's doing it?
I think that's what they're going for. The fact that he's just totally disrespectful to everyone he meets.
But there's a point where, like, if you use it so many times, like, even if it is coming from, like, an asshole character, I can see where it becomes very abrasive.
Yeah. Right. I mean, and it's not like there aren't other words, like, to use, you know what I mean? Like, you could have used bitch or something else, but
also dislike that word too, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just saying, like, if you had, like, mixed that in with, like, asshole and everything like that, then it probably wouldn't have, like, I wouldn't have noticed it as much. But it was just because, like, it was basically the only word that he had used, like, as an insult. I was just like, why? Like, do we have to keep doing this? Like, I get it, you're supposed to be mean or, you know, toxic, but even, like, toxic, you're Toxic Rick, like, you have a really, like, large brain, you're super smart, so I'm sure your vocabulary is just as large, like.
Yeah, that is true. They're showing different sides of Rick's intelligence too there. And counterpoint to my counterpoint is that it doesn't really matter if it's an asshole character saying it. The TV show is still presenting dialogue with that word in it.
Yep.
Yeah. Is that true that they've never said that? They do say bitch a lot. Alex, does the end credit song say pussy? I don't think that's true. Is it?
No, it doesn't.
No, yeah, come on.
It doesn't?
No, it just heavily implies.
No, Terry folds are not. Come on, Terry folds are its own folds, and it's its own thing.
You thought that was sexual? How could you think that?
It's a very pure, innocent song, Alex. Jeez, he does say "little bitch" in that song, because that's Justin Roiland says that every single time he's improvising. But
I probably confused the two. That might be.
I don't know if "bitch" is better. I mean, I'm going to defer to April on this, but both have sexist connotations with female referring to. But that's interesting. I think I watched the show. I, like, try to turn off my moral sense. But
it's just one of those things that was very much, like, in my face. And I know we're launching into, like, this huge discussion about it, but that was just, like, for me, that, like, I was just not into it. Like,
very valid. This is I'm surprised I didn't notice this. I think the show's still, like, I think Rick and Morty's conditioned me to be super morally amoral watching the show. I feel like maybe that's the reason. I don't know. That's an interesting one. Okay. Yeah, definitely a larger discussion there. But very valid. Andy, what's your weakest part of the episode?
I think there's the weakest parts of the episode are they're not that bad. But if I had to pick one, I think I'd pick the fight in the living room between Toxic and Healthy Rick. I think it added the least to the episode. It really could have just been Toxic Rick teleported into their world, then went off and did his thing. It didn't really add anything to the plot. We already knew that Toxic and Healthy Rick didn't really like each other. It didn't really change that. It just added a couple of gags. And the gags that they had in that fight were actually pretty funny. The gun and Morty showing up with the tank were both really funny moments for me. But I think it added the least to the episode. So I think that's the weakest part.
I like the fight.
The fight. I'm saying there's a lot of good moments in this episode, Dylan. If I had to pick something, this is it.
There's an argument for it being the down part. Okay, I can buy that down tempo part of the episode. I did like better or worse than the roller coaster fight last episode.
This is better than
better.
Okay,
better.
Okay. I definitely think so. Yeah.
But this is also a better overall episode than that episode.
We'll determine that next question. But Alex, your weakest part of the episode?
Okay, weakest part of the actual episode, I think it's the religion gag. Just the fact that Rick and Morty does it so much better with more nuance and get swifty. It dedicates an entire B plot to it. So it just felt like a cheap joke here. And you can, if you want to insert the sets joke at the end of them having an orgy or whatever, you can put that in so many other settings that would also work. Just sticking in a church so you have the whole, God isn't real, we did it for money and all. But if you've done that so much better in another episode, I see no reason to just recycle it for a cheap joke here.
Did you say get swifty and better in the same sentence? Interesting.
The B plot is much better than the A plot, I will admit. I enjoy that. Principal Vagina is amazing.
I do love Principal Vagina. Okay, you brought it back around.
I love Principal Vagina as well.
Speaking of pussy. Okay, take it. That was inappropriate. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, I appreciated that. That was appropriate.
No, Germain? I don't know what anyway, synonyms. Okay. Yeah, I agree with Alex. I think that was the weakest part of the episode was the first part of that joke. And then I love the children crying after they kill the mascot. But
yeah, the
children murdering each other is a new theme of this
yeah,
show.
I find it apparently I find that very funny. So this is what I've learned about myself.
I do too. So.
Also, shout out to Sbarro, which I ate at mall food courts very often as a kid. So
hot take, Sbarro is good. Anyway, so I guess
it used to be good.
It's not
good
different
anymore,
now, right? Yeah. Okay, yeah. Alex gets 5 points for that answer. April gets 5 points. Oh, I'm docking a point from Alex though for misremembering the song. He's criticizing. Come on. Andy gets 3 points. I don't even remember. Oh, because I disagree. Okay, there you go.
Wait, what did I misremember?
There's pussy in the song. Nope.
There is
nope.
Oh,
there's not.
Yeah, you lost 3 points now from the song criticism, so that's not a good path to take here. But just keep going. This episode, and just come on, give me the win. This episode is the blank best episode of the season. The best, the worst, the second best, second worst. Out of 6, where would you rank it, Andy?
I rank this second best. This is very close and very marginal, to Pickle Rick, but this is second best to me. It's a very different episode that I'm used to with Rick and Morty. It's a lot more plotty. It goes into a lot more deep themes that I did like, but I did just love the absurdity of Pickle Rick a very little bit more than this episode.
Okay. And by the way, I have no answer to this for once. I have not ranked this episode. I always rank episodes on my Rick and Morty rankings list right away. This is really tough.
This one's a really hard
ranking episode.
Yeah. This season. It's in my top half of episodes, but I don't know where to put it. So I'm listening to your guys' logic here. April, blank best episode of the season.
It's tied for second best episode for me.
That's very specific.
Pickle Rick.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tied with Pickle Rick. So I both really, really enjoyed them especially for what they were worth. But Rick Shanks I still really enjoy that episode.
Okay. So, yeah, a lot of people definitely agree with you on that being number one. Okay, tied for second. Second, Alex, what do you say?
I've also got it second. I have Rick Shank Redemption as my first place, but I think it's better than Pickle Rick. It's better than the Mad Mats episode. It's better than Vindicators. It uses its side characters a lot better. I don't think there's any down moments in this episode. So yeah, solid second best, and as I mentioned before, top 5 of series overall.
Is it smarter though to make up a different number, just not to say second for the third time? I appreciate the honesty, but
I don't get what I don't get about this is I don't get why you guys are ranking Rick Shank as first. I think this
is a larger debate.
I think it's
We've had this debate. We've had this debate.
I know.
I agree with Andy here, but it's valid to have it one. Yeah, I think it's like 1, 2, or this episode is like 2 or 3 to me. I don't even know. This is a tough one.
See,
I think 2
that's
is our
why
consensus,
I said
right?
like it's tied for second for me because I really enjoyed Pickle Rick, but I really enjoyed Rest and Ricklaxation. But they're very different episodes, but they both do it really well for me. So
yeah. By the way, as the season goes on, I'm getting a little higher on Vindicators because it's just like I don't think this episode.
Join the Vindicators crowd.
I don't think this episode's as funny as Vindicators. I'm like that might be one of the funniest episodes of the season. Like clearly it's like not as smart as some of these other ones, but or like as narratively interesting. But I think there's more laughs there than some of these other ones. Anyway. Yeah,
y'all gave me trouble for enjoying Vindicators, so ha.
Yeah, and not my worst of the season. You know what my worst is last week. But okay, 4 points all around there to wrap things up. What is your best guess for what will happen next episode? 2 weeks from now on Ricklantis Mix-Up. They're going to Atlantis. That's all we know. Ricklantis Mix-Up. April, give me something here.
They're not actually going to Atlantis.
That was mine. You stole my answer.
They say they went to Atlantis. What's the how?
No, they were going there.
I don't believe.
Don't they come back? And aren't they wed and they came back from Atlantis? What happened?
Well, it could
maybe.
It could be a Columbus situation where he thought he got to India, but
baby, they don't actually go to Atlantis. They're going somewhere else, but they're gonna think they're there. Maybe they go to Atlanta. There we go.
Atlanta, not Atlantis. I like that. Okay. Yeah,
they're gonna tip their hat to Futurama on that one.
Futurama, okay. I like that. They're not going to Atlantis. Andy, make up a new answer.
All right. I think they're gonna go to Atlantis, but they're gonna take something from Atlantis and swap it with something else by accident, and it's either gonna be like an egg or a precious treasure, and they're just not gonna realize it, and it's gonna lead to like one of those classic Rick and Morty episodes where a monster gets loose in their house or the town they live in, and it's just gonna wreak havoc, and there's gonna be some crazy solution to it in the end, and Atlantis is gonna have to show up in their town, and no one's really gonna care that Atlantis is there. No one's really gonna care at all.
Wait, I didn't follow that. Atlantis is in their town?
Oh no! Like warriors from Atlantis are going to come to their town.
That seems like something they could do. Yeah, sure. Okay. I do like. If you didn't have that prepared, that was good. I like making that up. Okay. Alex.
So Rick and Morty head to Atlantis to I guess get a rare virus from mutated dolphins that live there. He manages to get it and comes back, but then he's later convinced to live amongst the lost society that lives there in the ruins. And Morty has to have a talk with Rick about why he wants to abandon Earth. Rick has a very deep dialogue about how he can be happy in any dimension he wants. He doesn't need them. And Morty has to smack sense into him to bring him back.
See, Alex outprepares you guys. I mean, that's this is his strength. Is this last question here? That's a 7 out of 5 answer for Alex. April gets 5 for they're not going to Atlantis. That was good comedic timing there. And Andy gets 5 for making something up. So
I'm so bad. That's April. I'm so bad. I've been waiting all podcast.
Oh my god! It's just who I called on first. Well, that's Andy's luck there. Okay, let's tabulate the final scores here. It was kind of close, but there was one person who had a lead the entire time, and tied for both have 34 points is Alex and Andy, and April wins with 36 points.
Yeah!
April, you're
look at me like my balls.
Okay. Okay, worth it, yes. Good celebration here. You have 30 seconds of FaceTime. Talk about whatever Rick and Morty subject you want, April. What do you got?
Oh, I still think that if you haven't gone and watched the episode where the people from the Adult Swim live stream act out Vindicators, you should totally go watch it because it is great. It's a great time. Like, it always makes me laugh. So please go do that. Otherwise, I love you. Yay.
Otherwise?
Yep.
I guess like all inclusive for that. Okay. Yeah, Alex wrote an article about that. You can find that on our blog section. They didn't do it for the last 2 episodes.
No.
No, last episode, I think they just sat in front of a couch watching it and giving commentary.
Yep.
What was this week? Do we know?
No, I don't
I
know.
haven't checked this week yet.
Okay.
I haven't heard anything from anyone about it, so I don't even know if they did anything. Yeah. I'm sure they did, though.
Yeah, I'm really disappointed it hasn't become a full series.
People seem very mad. People are very mad at them trolling the non-cable.
Oh, it's hilarious! I don't know why people are so mad about it.
I think it's funny because like the people who are mad about it are like the people who were exactly there to like watch it for free, and so it's very like they're being really honest and they're throwing that honesty in their faces because the people who like the Adult Swim streams, like they just think it's hilarious. Like they're like, that's the best prank ever. And we love you guys even more so for doing it. So.
Okay. Yeah, Adult Swim can do what they want with their content. You can't expect them to stream their own stuff for free. I mean, come on. Who's Trisha, Alex?
Trisha is the kinky girl that appears in the beginning and the end talking about docking and peeing and all. And I just want to mention that a popular fan
Trisha Lang. Please use her full name. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Fair enough.
Or
anybody else.
Massive stripper titties. That would also apply.
Yes, stripper titties, girl.
Sure. Oh, yes.
Okay, so we know that Trisha was hanging out with Brad, who is connected to Summer, who is connected to Rick. Now here, she's hanging out with Jessica, who is connected to Morty, who is connected to Rick. Also, we see that she has very interesting kinks, and also we know that she is trying to hang out like a high school kid. And she is voiced by Cassie Steele, who also voices Tammy, who also has all those qualities. So, if she's already appeared in 2 episodes back to back. She is important. This is not the last you're going to see of her. My guess, she's an agent of Tammy's. They're somehow connected. There are some who think that they're the same person, which I doubt, but you are going to see Trisha again.
Is this did you see this somewhere?
Yeah, where did you see this?
I sensed it because I saw the voice cast, so I went and looked for Trisha's stuff, and I found someone that fleshed it out a little more. But yeah, they have the same voice actors. That's
Alex, why didn't you say this during the thing? This is a 10-point theory here.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Just say it. Oh my god. Trisha Lang is Tammy in disguise. I think that's what we're saying here. I mean...
Yeah. Ooh.
Oh my god. Yes, please, can we do this? Oh my god.
Can we please?
Alex, how could you not have said this earlier?
This is like when I heard Lion is Pink Diamond for the first time. I'm all in on this. Okay. It makes so much sense though, because why bring this random girl in for 2 episodes?
Yeah.
Oh man.
2 episodes, like one right after the other, too. And like
this is how Tammy was introduced too. She appeared in like one background episode of Summer in School, then she appeared with Bird Person.
Oh man, Trisha Lang is Tammy. Oh, that would how they. Okay, I'm in.
Trisha Lang.
Just show up now, just randomly.
If this is true, they've done a great job integrating her into these 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm going to be disappointed when it doesn't happen, though. So I think that's...
Yeah.
Okay. Also in the finale panel, Alex, if this does not happen, you'll lose points. So, but if it happens, that's like plus 10 points. So we'll see. Okay.
If it happens.
Okay.
By the way, I wasn't going to complain in episode, but I didn't get a bonus point for saying it was going to happen at a spa last panel.
Oh, yeah.
I remembered. I just didn't remind Dylan.
Andy's playing dirty here. Yeah, I mentioned on the recap that someone said spa. I didn't remember who it was, but okay.
It was definitely
your bonus
Alex.
point wouldn't have helped. Although,
I
didn't,
it doesn't matter. I already won.
April 1. No, yeah, I would have invoked it if it was 1 point.
Okay, I see. That's smart there. And again, if I didn't dock someone, they would have won. Typical. Okay, so this was self-inflicted docking here. Yeah. So this is our panel here. Let us know what you thought on any of these. Please comment. Is Trisha Lang Tammy? We need to know.
Tell us.
I'm in. It's happening. I love characters being disguised as other character theories. That's the only. This is my favorite thing. It's
for the record, I'm on the side of she's an agent. I don't think she actually is Tammy, but
it'd be much more cathartic if she was actually Tammy. Yeah.
I'm gonna research this more. Don't worry, guys.
We have 2 weeks now. Okay, I was going to do another panel next week, but maybe we should have an hour discussion on is Trisha laying Tammy?
Yeah.
This is the conversation.
Yeah.
This is the conversation no one needs, but we're going to have anyway.
I'm actually going to add that to the panel for next week. I'm going to add that as a question, so be prepared. Okay.
What evidence do you have from this episode that supports that Trisha laying is Tammy?
Like, yes, is Trisha laying Tammy, yes or yes? That'll be the question. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good stuff from the three of you. Good panel here. Let us know what you thought in comments wherever you're listening. Subscribe to us for more Rick and Morty comment, and we'd love iTunes reviews. You can star ratings are great too. I've seen a few of those, but also reviews. We'll read them at the end of one of our 2 podcasts every week. Put those on our Rick and Morty feed or our main feed. Both are great. I'll check both of them. And that would help support our Rick and Morty podcast and boost us up the rankings a little bit. Overlyanimated.com, so you can find everything. You can consider supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thank you very much to all of our patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Rachel, aka Rachel Rose. And thanks always to our patron executive producers, John, Ryan, Steve, Alex, and Andy. Upcoming podcasts include BoJack stuff, BoJack Horseman, which you all should watch if you watch the show. I don't know what else is coming up. More Mysticons.
More Mysticons.
That's the show for Rick and Morty audiences. Yeah.
New Adventure Time.
Oh yeah, Adventure Time. We had an OKO podcast go up. A bunch of stuff. But we will be back next week, even though it's the off week, with a panel sometime midweek. So look out for that. And then, of course, Ricklantis mix up. We're very happy for them not to actually go to Atlantis, says April. So
definitely.
And that will be 2 weeks from last Sunday. So check out all that stuff, and thanks guys very much for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.